Hello everyone, Neil Tappin here from Golf Monthly and welcome to this video in which we're going to look at 6 things you should consider before going for a custom fitting. I'm here at Camberwell Park Golf Club and I'm going to be talking to PGA professional head pro here, John Jacobs. He's one of the Golf Monthly top 25 coaches and he's going to talk you through just some of those factors, so things like your shot patterns, your ball striking, the sort of shots that you like to see while you're out on the golf course. These are all really important factors that will help you find the right golf clubs for your game. Now, this video is being produced in partnership with Callaway. If you are interested, there is a demo day locator. I'll put in a link in the description below if you're interested. But let's get started now, looking at the 6 things you need to consider before a custom fitting. Okay, so the first one on our list to talk about is playing ability, because I think a lot of people would see an environment like this and there's a lot of technology, and if you're just starting out in the game or perhaps a higher handicapper, it can feel a bit intimidating. You've got a PGA pro looking at your every move. John, it can feel a bit intimidating. What level of golfer should think about a fitting, and what level of golfer is better off going for lessons, improving their consistency before custom fitting?
Well, I think as PGA pros, we're lucky because we can offer the both. So we can offer the equipment advice and we can offer the lesson advice. And there's always a balance between the two. But I think if you're starting out, you still need to be using product that's going to be easy for you to learn and understand the game.
Okay.
So Callaway product will always perform better when it's fitted. And as soon as you get into a handicap index, that's the time for it to be done. It's not about how much it costs. It's about, particularly with the driver, about the loft and the flex and the length of club that you might need to enjoy the game. And I think there's a lot of people that just go out thinking that a driver is a driver. I've got 2 products here.
Pick anything up, second hand or whatever, and think I'll just use that. But actually, even if you are just starting out, you can end up with something that makes the game much harder for yourself.
We always associate it's like buying a pair of shoes. You'd never just take a pair of shoes and wear them straight away without knowing the size.
Yes.
And also probably not using somebody else's either. So you need to get the right equipment in your hands regardless of what level you're at. But you don't need that intensity when you're starting out. You need to be recommended a product that incidentally can be adjusted as you improve.
Yes.
So you don't just buy it for the moment, you grow with it.
Right, okay,
Which is really important. I've got 2 drivers here actually. One's an Epic Max LS, 9-degree stiff shaft, and the same family, the Epic Max, in a 12-degree regular shaft. Now they've got the same names as drivers, but they couldn't be more different. The performances off both of these is quite amazing. The difference is amazing. And in the wrong hands, that's not going to work. And in the wrong hands, that's not going to work. Yeah. So it's an important subject.
And then there's every type of golfer in between. There's a whole host of different driver heads in the Callaway family. They can all be set up differently. So hopefully that gives you an idea. If you are either just starting out or if you're a higher handicapper thinking about equipment, hopefully John's advice there will help. Okay, so this one is all about player preference. So things like, what do you like to look down on and how much forgiveness do you need? It's a really important thing to figure out, actually, I think, before you go for a fitting, so that you can kind of hone in on the types of, particularly iron models that might be right for you. John, what's your advice on this front?
Well, I think there's always a balance between look and function.
Okay.
Iron technology has developed massively, but it's brought with it a little bit of tradition behind it. It's dragged that through. So we have players that like a thin top edge, like to be seen with a bladed iron.
I mean, you're holding in your hands there, John, the Callaway Apex MB.
The MB iron.
Everybody would want that in their bag, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, it's a pretty looking iron.
It's a beautiful looking iron, but if you're not hitting it consistently enough, if you're not quite, hitting the same number time and time and time again, then there are other irons in the family that can really help you do that, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this requires, to produce a good performance from this club, this MB, you need a lot of speed and a lot of centre striking.
Yeah.
And that really puts a lot of people out of that bracket already. That's just fact. And so it suits a few, but not many. But there's a lot that would like to play it. But the desire is strong, but we wouldn't recommend necessarily a lot of people into that product for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and that's why you have 5 different iron models in the family, right all the way up to the one that you've got over there is the DCB version, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it still looks good.
Yeah,
right? So looks are still important. Nobody wants to use anything that doesn't look fantastic, do they?
No, so what we found with the Apex is that they they look very, very similar looking down across the whole family.
Right, okay.
And that is a winner for Callaway, because you don't want to be looking down and it's reminding you that you need help. You want to be looking down on the product that you want to enjoy and you like the look of it.
You're excited about using it.
That's exactly what it is. So,
yeah.
Provided that we fit you correctly and give you the right product, the right loft, particularly, then from there you'll get the performance as well as the looks, and that's a winner.
Okay, and then one last question I had for you, John. So if you, in your fitting, let's say you're hitting a bunch of 7-irons and you're hitting them all, right to left, nice high flight, but actually when you get onto the golf course, you quite like to hit some lower ones and you quite like to hit some fades. Yeah. What would you recommend? Do you recommend that the player hitting a few of those shots to see how they feel, to see whether they feel comfortable hitting those shots? Yeah,
absolutely. I think what a fitter would like is he likes to get feedback from the person that's being fitted.
Right.
So they're not always being led to what the fitter needs. It's a feedback thing. So if you say, I also like to hit this low cut shot into some of our holes, well, see if you can do that with that product.
Yes.
So that you can start to feel confident, not just with one 7-iron high draw, like you say, but you can start to shape it if you're at that level. Yeah. If you're at a level where you say, look, anything on the green with a solid, consistent flight, that's what I'm after, fine, that's what we're dealing with.
But so that's all feedback that's valuable, isn't it?
Feedback is everything in fitting. It's feel, it's performance, and like you said, it's about looks. Do you like the look and the shape of that product?
Yeah, so there you have it. Have a good think about what you like to look down on. Have a good think about the level of forgiveness you'll need. It will help you kind of narrow down your search that little bit so that you get the maximum from your fitting session. Okay, so John, the next one's about shot patterns. Most people will have a preferred shot shape.
Yeah.
And would you fit people to that shot shape? Would you be looking to help straighten that ball flight out? Would you be looking to accentuate that ball flight? What's the best way of thinking about shot patterns?
So I think it's about finding out what the player wants, not what the fitter wants. So if you've got an individual that's, say for instance, hitting it a little bit left to right and can often get the one that will leak strongly to the right and is trying to eliminate that shot.
Right, yeah.
Then I would be fitting a product that's going to be trying to counteract that.
Okay.
Because they don't enjoy watching that flight and they know that there's benefits moving the ball the other way. So we would then fit accordingly to that.
Yeah, is it a good idea to be thinking about trying to take one side or other of the golf course out of play? You hear a lot of tour players saying, take the left side out of play. Yeah. So they know, even when they're under the most severe pressure, they're never going to hit it left off the tee, for instance. Yeah. Is that a good way of thinking about it?
You've got to be playing to your strengths, particularly with the driver. And if you've got a product in your hand which you know is helping you to eliminate that fear of a side of the golf course that you've got, it's got to be a benefit. And we tend to fit. Fitting's really interesting because not only is it loft, but it's also face aim. So for instance, when we get a player that likes to start the ball slightly to the right, then we're going to make sure that we perhaps start with a loft that's a little bit more than they would expect initially.
Right, yeah.
Take the loft off, and that then itself opens the face up a little bit.
Interesting.
And ensures that they can actually start the ball down that right-hand side. So it's not, the starting number is really important in fitting, but it's what you do with that starting number from there, which is, so again, similarly, if we've got a player that, for instance, wants to sort of keep the right side of the golf course, we'd maybe start with a slightly stronger loft, which would be counterintuitive. You think, well, hang on, strong loft is going to slice it more. Add a bit of loft, changes the face aim left, suddenly you've got a ball flight that's straighter, and he's playing with an 11 degree with a 9 written on the bottom of it. But that's the skill of fitting.
Got it. Well, that's very interesting. So I think there's the important point to make here is that you need to put trust in the fitter, that the fitter's going to know what they're doing. And then also just be open with the fitter. Tell them what your bad shot is.
Absolutely.
Even if on the day of the fitting you just hammer everything straight down the middle of the fairway, if you say to the fitter, take out the right side of the golf course for me, that tends to be my bad shot, that can be really valuable. If you do that, you should end up with golf clubs that really work. Okay, so the next one is about preconceptions. I think a lot of people will have been for fittings in the past and will think to themselves, well, I'm a 9 degree stiff player. And that's kind of what they're gunning for is when they come in for a fitting. Is that fair? Do you see a bit of that, John?
Yeah, we do get that, and that's the product that they're actually playing with at the time. and yet they've come to get fitted. So you know that they're actually looking for improvement, but they still think that because that's the product they've used a lot, then that would be where they should still be. So there is quite a lot of ego in fitting, really, from the player's point of view. So I think, yeah, coming in with an open mind and trying an understanding also how, you know, that drivers can be made so much easier to use for that individual is very important. So, and that, you know, you suddenly might go from a 9 to an 11, and they are performing so much better, but they've got to accept that fact as well. They've got to actually, oh, I thought it was a 9. No, but this is much better for you.
Yeah, and they should be easier to accept if you hit the ball straighter and further.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then there's also an important point about irons here as well. So we've talked about trying to sort of figure out how much forgiveness you need and narrowing down your search. But at the same time, you need to be open-minded, I guess, to the idea that actually maybe more forgiveness, more offset, a thicker top line might be right for you.
Yeah, and again, people have got this perception that they don't need the help on the tour. If you look in their golf bags very often, they've got product that is easy to use. They're also going to want a club that's going to help them perform.
Yeah.
So it's not all about blades and extra stiff and 8-degree drivers, and you know, it's about a flight that they have been fitted for. Incidentally, they're getting much better. Quote me on it, but you know, the average loft on tour with a driver is probably closer to 11 now, rather than it being a 9, because they want to hit some fairways.
So yeah, there's an awful lot of technology at work here, both within the shafts and the head. So being open-minded to how that technology might be able to benefit you is a must. Okay, so the next thing to consider is to understand how important it is to hit the centre of the club consistently. And that's something that you can really help with during a fitting. The question is, John, how do you do it?
Right, well, you have to obviously establish a player's consistency generally. So we need to measure that, which we can do now, so we can see if there's a varied spread pattern across the face.
Right, so are you hitting it consistently out the toe, consistently out the heel, or is it all over the face?
All over the face.
And actually, I guess the player can come in and say, I tend to hit the ball out the toe.
Yeah.
Is that useful?
Absolutely. Great information.
Okay.
Really, really good information, because the first point of us then is we'll look at the setup to make sure that's in a good shape. And then if we can offer any advice from there, then perhaps straight away we can eliminate that problem.
Right, you might be standing a little too close to it or something.
Correct, too far away from it, whatever. You could, to some degree, alter the length of the golf club to try and centre the strike. But the golf club's a different length anyway.
Of the irons, yeah.
So it's not like you hit it at the toe in an 8-iron.
Yeah.
You know, you're perfect for a 7-iron, you hit it at the heel with a 6-iron. You're going to be generally migrating towards the toe.
Right, so you tend to not change the length of the shaft too much?
I do.
Okay.
Reference for a player's height and posture.
Fine.
Once we've measured them, we'll do that. And that in itself, in theory, should help them to get a more centred strike. Most of that is down to technical. Okay. But also the lie angle has a huge effect, because the ball will often migrate to the lowest point.
Okay.
So if you're coming in with the hands quite high, relatively club's too flat for them, ball migrates to the lowest point at the toe.
So you hit it at the toe, and then what happens?
Correct. Yeah. So you can get that effect where the ball will twist out to the right, and then effectively if it's too upright, so the hands are quite low through impact, or the player's too quite short, you know, the ball will migrate towards the neck of the golf club, and you know, you could get that as an impact. And also you're changing face aim as well as you're changing loft. So as the lie is changing, the face is changing with it. Even though the leading edge is staying square, the face is twisting off line.
Right, interesting.
So that's very important. People forget that. It's a flat face, yes it is, but as soon as I drop the face is pointing left now. Yeah. As soon as I make it forward, the face is pointing right, even though the leading edge stays the same. It
goes to show that there's a lot that goes into a good fitting, but having an idea about where you strike the ball on the face consistently, particularly with your irons, is vitally important, because there's some really important tools in the armoury that can help you find the middle of the blade more often. Okay, our last thing to consider is about gapping and the makeup of your set in general. John, what's the mistake here that people make that really ends up costing them?
Well, we talked about centres of strike being very important, and a lot of people, particularly at the top end of the game or top end of their clubs, hit probably the same distance with 2 or 3 clubs. So,
right, okay.
So they could hit the 7-iron, the 6-iron and the 5-iron, very similar distances.
Right.
So what they're doing is they're buying too much product.
Okay, so can I ask you, why does that happen then? Is it because you've not got the speed that you need at the top end of the bag to hit the 5-iron any further than the 6 and the 7?
Correct. So maybe the ability to strike it consistently out of the centre of the club face as well.
Okay.
So that's when you would then need to look at product that is helping that. So for instance, rescue clubs. We see it a lot in the ladies' game where they'll, this is not in any way meant to be detrimental, but they hit a lot of shots in a similar distance, down to the speed, the lack of speed that they need a bit more speed. So if you're not getting the gapping, don't buy the clubs, but make the gaps wider within your set.
Okay.
So buy a half set and see the gapping. Like, we're looking about between, say, 5 and 10 yards per an iron. If you're not getting that gap, drop one out, use that space for maybe an extra wedge or something, and then you will get that spacing.
Okay.
Otherwise, you stand on the golf course and you don't know which one to hit. But
if there's only 3 yards difference between your 7-iron and your 6-iron, it's kind of
absolutely
a bit. So how do you go through a gapping session? So I come in, I say to you, okay, I've seen this video, and they've told me think about the top end of the bag. I'm worried that I might be hitting those clubs similar distances. How do you go and figure out what's going on?
Two ways of going to gapping session. You either get a player to hit 10 shots and you just select the flusher. Right. The one that's gone the best. Yeah. And then you move to the next go and you'll find the flusher of that one and you'll try and find the differences between them. So that'll be their maximum gapping. Okay. Yeah. And then, which is far better, is the average one. So you'd hit 10, take out some really poor ones, the thin or the one off to the right off the heel or whatever. Take those out and get some form of consistency and average those out. And then you'll gap from the particular clubs from there. The average. And that's a better way of doing it. Yeah, absolutely. And what we very often find is we get a really neat pattern, wedge 9, 8, 7, and then it breaks down. 6 is a little bit better than 7, but sometimes very similar. 5 is not improving at all, and it just more inconsistent, and 4 we can't use. Yeah, and it's interesting. These are just the pitfalls, aren't they? This is not. You're not doing anything necessarily wrong. No. It's just the way that it happens for a lot of golfers. So you would suggest in that scenario putting hybrids in, or maybe dropping clubs out, and putting wedges in at the bottom end. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because that then makes it a lot more enjoyable, and also, when you're gapping as well, be realistic. How many times are you using that 5-iron in around a golf? Yes. Probably not even once for some people because they avoid it anyway. There's no point in having it in the bag. You might as well go and buy a rescue that you are going to enjoy. Yeah. And be very open-minded. And I think that's when you can get real progress, is when somebody guides you in the right direction, you accept it, then you can move forward. Okay, so think about the composition of the set that might be right for you. Think about how far you hit the clubs at the top end of the bag, because if there is a gathering, a grouping that's getting a bit too tight at the top end, it might well be that a gapping session can really sort you out. So there you have it, some really great advice from John there. If you do have any questions, please leave some comments below. We'll get back to as many of you as we possibly can. And as I said at the beginning, we'll put in a link in the description to the demo day locator that Callaway have if you're interested in getting a fitting for yourself. But that's it for now from Camberwell Park. We'll see you next time.